Welcome to this session for ILP, where we're going to be talking about some of the recent upgrades and updates on EVS. So I'm joined in this call by Matt Emery, learning technologist. Hi, Matt. And we've also got Pascal joining us as well, just to look at some queries. So we're recording this video because hopefully it might be useful for other people watching. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through step by step the process of completing an ILP. We're going to look at it from the student perspective and then obviously from the teacher perspective as well. In fact, what I want to do, just to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to open up another Google Chrome page. There we go. Right then. So first of all, with all of the ILPs, they're set up with students' questions. So this is for the students to answer. They can answer their questions in many different ways. They can use the college app if they've downloaded it. And from there, it's as simple as clicking a button which says My Reviews and Targets, and then that will take them through to their ILP, whether it's this one, which is the starting point, or any other ones in future. The other way to do it is to actually go into the My College Learner Hub. So you can access that by going to the college website, going into My College Links. So again, if you're a tutor and you've got a classroom of students and you want them all to log in and check their ILPs, we recommend they do it this way. At the top, they've got a little button which says the On Track Learner Hub. And if you click onto there, this is the version of EVS On Track, but for the students. So this is what they will see. Now, as we've seen with all students, in order to access this system, what they will need to do is set up their multi-factor authentication. So that's with Microsoft. So if they're accessing this via a college computer, they've already managed to log in with their S number and their password. We recommend they also log into their emails. So maybe there's a little symbol on the desktop that says Office 365. Click onto that because that will talk the student through about setting up the multi-factor. But essentially, once they've done that, all the student needs to do is click on this button here, which says sign in, enrolled with us. And what that'll do is the system will automatically recognise their student number and their password and take them straight through to their records. So the system itself takes about 10-15 seconds to upload. If you've got, say, 20 or 30 students in a class and they're all trying to access at the same time, you might find it's a little bit slower. But that's just based down to Wi-Fi and obviously how many people are accessing the system at the same time. I mean, we're doing this video at 3:10, and as you can see, that was relatively quick. I can get through. So for this particular student, once they log in, you can see it gives them some information about their course, where they're studying, timetable, attendance, punctuality, and they will see this in the app as well. So it's some really nice visuals there for students to use to kind of understand you know, where they are, you know, in terms of their course and information. On the left-hand side, there's loads of other useful links and bits and bobs, but we are only interested in this one, which is My Reviews and Targets. Now, this particular learner has completed their review, but if they hadn't completed their review, you would see, when I click on this page, it would actually come up with, you know, like a little editable section. It would say ILP starting point, a little pencil mark. And you would just click onto that and that would take you to the review. In this instance, the student's actually completed it. So instead, we're going to go to completed reviews, and there you go. We can see it's got a lovely green tick. That means that it's been submitted, the tutor has seen it, and they've ticked it off. But just to talk us through that process, let's assume that a student hadn't completed it, that this is the first time they've seen it, they need to complete this ILP. What they would have in this screen, you've got view the review itself, or you can just kind of like look at the questions. And then there's also a button underneath that would say complete the review. So that's where you actually go in and start completing that information. The review itself contains obviously individual questions. So it's a question and an answer. Some of the questions have to be typed. Others might have a checkbox or a tick box or something. Just make sure the students are going through and answering them as best they can. We have also noticed there are some questions where, for example, like things like access arrangements. So, you know, the student will be asked, do you need any support with exam arrangements? Yes or no. They might select no, I don't. But the next question might say, do you need a reader, scribe, etc.? Where that happens, that means it's a non-mandatory answer in that particular scenario. So they don't have to answer that question, but it just means that it's there so we can capture all of that data. And then essentially, imagine that this was, you know, hadn't been completed. I go right to the end of my review, tells me how many questions I've answered, and then it should have the button down here to say either save for later, don't let them save for later, just tell them to submit. Okay. So once that's done, the ILP will then be in progress, which means the students answered their questions, and now it's down to the tutor to do their part. So what we need to do now is go to the EBS system, and you'll be able to find as a tutor under ILP tutor, you click into here and it will bring up any students that is registered to you underneath this particular review. So just to show you the different types of reviews there are, I'm going to go into ILP Manager. ILP Manager is actually a new function that we have with EBS. So what this means is that for managers, so people like heads of school, possibly even deputy heads, they can go in and have a look at individual students' ILP and see what they've typed and processed. And the way we've set it up is there's different reviews based on the students and their profile. So for example, if a student has an EHCP, they have this review, and that's got its own unique set of questions and answers. For 16 to 18-year-olds, mainstream, adults, foundation learning, ESOL, and pre-16. So all of these reviews have been created with questions that have been authorised and processed by the management within that particular faculty. So they've agreed with those questions, and that's how you know, Matt Emery and the team have been able to create it ready for the students to complete. So from here, we can see there's lots of different ones, but for your perspective as a tutor, you would go to your ILP tutor, click into My ILPs, and it will bring up a list of all of the students who are attached to you, okay? You'll notice at the top of the wheel that you've got these different colour-coded elements. So this is just telling you the total number of students attached, which ones are in review. So if they're in review, that means the student has done something. They've submitted it to you to be completed. But equally, if they are overdue, which you might find some of your students are now, it's because we put a 14-day timer from the date of release. So if we release the ILP on the 4th of September, as we're going past that 14-day period, they will change into overdue. But ultimately, the process is still the same. You've got your list of students, you can go through and check. Now, with the number of students, you might be looking at this as a tutor and going, why have I got this student on my list? I don't know who the student is, why they're attached to me. I'm not their personal tutor. It's because this ILP is linked to anyone on a register that's attached to that student. So it might be that you're a vocational tutor and you can see some of your students, but if you're an English and maths teacher, you will also see some students, you know, or if you're running skills builder sessions, etc. If that student is attached to a register, it will be linked to the named person, and that's why you will see this information, okay? If you wanted to specifically search for a student, you could type in the details. So if you have a name of a student, so I want to look for all students called Luke, for example. It will filter that down for you. Equally, you can also search by your course code as well. So if you have your course code, you can type that in and that will filter it down for you as well. You can also filter it. So at the moment I'm showing all, but if I only want to see in review, do you know what I mean? So you can kind of filter it down as you go through. What will happen then is you'll need to go into review itself. You can do that one of two ways. You can click on the name of the person, or you can click on the three dots and click view review. All right. Now, I've been attached to obviously a couple of learners, and many of these students are actually live students. But what you might find is that when you click into review, there's more than one tutor attached. Yeah. So in that instance, what you have to do is to basically make yourself the owner. Yeah. So take ownership of that person. The take ownership button will appear. So if the review staff has got several members of staff, so Pascal, if it was you, and it's got my name, your name, Matt's name, etc. Well, that means that me, you, or Matt have the option to take ownership of that learner. So we just click that button, and then they become your responsibility. And then from there, you do what's called the answer staff questions. So the answer staff questions, it doesn't mean there's anything you need to physically answer necessarily. What this means in this scenario is you are quality checking what that student has put. So essentially, have they answered those questions? What is the response? If there's anything you want to add as comments, you can. So, you know, I'm not going to do this in this version, but if I wanted to say, you know, additional goals to, you know, do X, Y, and Z. Yeah, if you've had a chat with the students, you want to put some extra comments in, you can, and that's be added into the information. But the key thing is to check the answers are correct, that they meet the requirements of that student. And then at the very end, you'd click complete review, and that finishes the process. So that's the process from start to finish in terms of going in as the ILP tutor, checking which students is yours, taking ownership, and then going through that step of checking the answers and clicking mark complete. What I will say is if you're going through your students, or if you're searching for a student, I'll use this example again. I'm looking for a student called Luke, but actually there's a student called Luke that isn't attached to me at the moment, but should be my student. What I would do in that instance is you can contact the EdTech team. You can do that. The easiest way to do that is via Teams. So in the Teams area, we have what's called Staff Portal. And in Staff Portal, you've got all these different channels. But if you look for the EdTech team, this is where you can start a new conversation, get in contact with us, and then we can answer your query. Equally though, if it's a case of you're missing a student or any other information, you can also speak to your head of school because they have what's called ILP manager rights. And under ILP manager, they can assign you to an ILP. So I'm looking for someone called Luke. I want my manager to add me to that, to that student. They could type in the name of the student or their person code, search and add me. Equally, they can also remove staff members as well. But at the moment, we're not going to be removing ILP staff until we've ensured that obviously everything is up to date. And then just a final thing to mention, once a student has been, claimed, so someone's taken ownership of that student, it will mean that they will no longer appear as outstanding on other people's records. So again, using that example, I've got a student called Luke, and there's me, Matt, and Pascal. We're all registered on that learner. But if Matt claims it, then for me and you, Pascal, that person will come off our list. So really, it's important at this stage that all staff members check their ILP tutor, make sure you are taking ownership of the students that are responsible for you, and more importantly, making sure that students are following the process of going into their on-track learner hub or using the college app to get those questions completed.